I'm just beginning another 200-mile journey. This time I'm leaving Nottingham, heading back to Brighton. And the car had an oil change yesterday, and the oil pressure is pretty amazing. I'll sort of wave this about generally because I'm watching the road. I can't see where I'm pointing. It reads sort of 75 pounds all of the time. If I rev it a bit harder, it does nudge up towards the 80 pounds, which is an astonishing pressure for such an engine. Jaguar XK engines often struggle to reach 40 pounds, and 60 is considered to be good. So this one is truly astonishing. I mentioned in the video yesterday, whilst I was changing the oil, that the fresh oil is getting dark quite quickly. And I think I've worked out what it is. This engine has never been rebuilt, and it's not a high mileage engine. It's never even had the cylinder head off. And I flushed the engine as soon as I got it up. I think it was STP I used, or one of the similar. And I put that in. You run it for 10 minutes and drain the oil straight away. And this is the fourth oil change I've done yesterday. I've not done a massive mileage here because in the UK here we've been under lockdown for months on end, and nobody's been really travelling that much. So this car's got used less than half of the time I've normally used it, and so the mileage has not been great, but I've still changed the oil anyway. And it's coming out, even after only 1,500 miles, it's coming out a bit dark. Not black, I do not leave it to go black, but darker than you'd think. And the engine's been flushed, and I don't believe that the oil ways are blocked or there's any sludge in the oil ways. What I think it is, the crankshaft itself, people don't realise, but the crankshaft, they're hollow, and oil gets pumped through the centre of the crankshaft, and it comes out of a small hole. It's probably only a 3mm hole in the middle of each journal, directly onto the bearings. Now, on the opposite side of that hole, at the other side of the journal, nearer to the centre of the crank, there's a plug. And these plugs are quite large. They're probably about 11 or 12 millimetres. And they do not fly out because they're peened. They're sort of peened by hand. And the metal's been folded over with a punch by hand in the factory. So there's no real way of them working out loose. But behind that sort of plug, there's a little well, and sludge collects in that well. Now that's what it's for. It's the opposite side to the hole in the journal where the oil's fed through, and centrifugal force when the crank is rotating it's doing 3,000 revs a minute at the moment, which is 70 miles per hour in this car at that speed. The speedometer's not working, but I know I'm doing 70 because of the revs. But the crank's turning at 3,000 revs, and centrifugal force forces any heavy particles in the oil into that little tiny pocket. That when you rebuild the engine, what you're supposed to do is, when you remove the crankshaft, you're supposed to withdraw those plugs and scrape out manually any sludge that's built up behind. And you'd be surprised how much sludge can build up. It's perhaps a third of a teaspoonful on even on a modest engine that's never been particularly abused. So I believe that's what's happened here. It's got sludge in there, and I think the oil is touching that build-up of sludge, and it's contaminating the oil. There's no realistic chance of that sludge dislodging and finding its way and blocking the hole, because centrifugal force keeps it sort of packed into. It keeps it packed into the little well that's sealed with the little plugs. Excuse me, I'm just stumbling slightly because I've got somebody sort of flashing his lights and waving furiously at me in a van, but never mind, I'll ignore him. What he wants. It's just disturbed me slightly. But anyway, just past me. I just lost my third try. There's no realistic chance of any sludge there. It's compacted. It's quite, when you do get it out, it's brown or grey in colour, and it's quite hard. It's almost like it looks a bit like the crushed up graphite from a pencil. And that's what it looks like. But I don't believe there's any risk of that dislodging and blocking the hole. But whilst it's there, the oil will pass by it, and it's bound to sort of rub small amounts off. And it very well might take a couple of years for the oil to be completely clean after a couple of thousand miles, because I'm sure that's where it's coming from. If this engine does ever get rebuilt, which I'm hoping not to have to do, but if it ever does, obviously I'll be sort of undoing those plugs, scraping out the inside of the hollows in the crankshaft. But in the short term, I just ignore it and keep changing the oil frequently. But I'm absolutely convinced that's where it's coming from, behind the plugs in the crankshaft. Anyway, I'm going to, it's quite heavy traffic, so I'm going to cut this short and continue my journey.